And she didn't know that she get any more frail, so it makes it like a small quantity to her. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome back.
Hare Krishna.
To the Founder Acharya series. Who remembers the title of the series?
Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya.
Good. Subtitle. That's a little long. Celebrating Srila Prabhupada's unique transcendental position in ISKCON, as well as every follower's foundational relationship with him. Remember that word foundational, it comes up again and again. And in this lesson, well, let me just read the prologue here. Lesson 2, the Founder Acharya principle. In the first lesson, we looked at the Guru principle. What a Guru is, why we need a Guru. How the Guru is one, how Gurus are different, and how all Gurus are different manifestations of Krishna's mercy. In this lesson, we'll look at the, quote, Founder Acharya, the foundational spiritual master of all gurus and disciples in his line. So, there is Srila Madhvacharya. There we go. Srila Madhvacharya instructing, Srila Vyasadeva, let's get my, instructing Srila Madhvacharya. Although Srila Madhvacharya accepted Diksha, he took initiation and he took sannyas from one Achyuta Preksha Swami. Since Madhva received the most shiksha, the most instruction, from Srila Vyasadeva, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur listed Madhva as Vyasa's disciple in the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. That disciplic succession list we have, that's from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And then Prabhupada is at the end because then he manifested as the one who actually carried it on, revived the Gaudiya line. From Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur called his list the Bhagavat Parampara, a line of Bhagavat instructors. It's a shiksha line. Following Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, our Srila Prabhupada noted in 2 early letters. There was hardly any books, right? 68, 69. So finally when the Gita came out, first TLC came out, then the Gita came out, and then at the end of the introduction we have this list. So the devotees scratched their heads and they started writing Prabhupada. What's this? So we're going to just 2 quick excerpts from Prabhupada's replies about the nature of the parampara. Quote, disciplic succession does not mean one has to be directly a disciple of a particular person, because the person had written, either Dinesh or Kirtanananda Swami, had written, where's Arjuna? He's our hero. Where is he in the list? So Prabhupada says, yes, Arjuna, he's the exemplar of hearing Bhagavad Gita. He got it, Param Brahma, Param Dhama, and he surrendered. Karishye Vachanam Kava. And then Prabhupada said, and Lord Chaitanya, Srila Prabhupada. Yeah. So Lord Chaitanya, he also preached Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, surrender to him is the goal of life. So it's the same. And he said if A equals B and B equals C, that means A equals C. It's a mathematical principle. And then Prabhupada said, it's just like a big tree, like you have a lot of nice big trees. If you have a big spreading oak, say, and then you go to one side of the tree and you pluck a leaf, and then you go to another side and you pluck a leaf, and then you examine them, you see, Prabhupada said, the taste is the same. He meant the characteristics in that context. So, it's not about that you took initiation in a certain line. It's all about, well, here's the second quote. Rather, quote, disciplic succession means to accept the disciplic conclusion. That's what parampara means. Yeah. So those were two 1969 letters. Yeah, the first one was Kirtanananda, and the second one was Dinesh. Prabhupada was in John Lennon's estate, Tittenhurst, when he wrote that letter. Now the Bhagavat Parampara includes both the book Bhagavat and the devotee Bhagavat, an Acharya who teaches the book by his personal example. Here's a quote from Bhagavatam Purport. Quote, the Acharya Sampradaya is strictly bona fide. The line of people who are living the teachings, the examples, Acharya, example, who are exemplars of the teachings. That's strictly bona fide. Therefore, one must accept the Acharya Sampradaya. Otherwise, one's endeavor will be futile. Bhagavad 10.2.31 purport. Now, as we'll see in this lesson, it is from the Acharya Sampradaya culture, this culture of exemplars who are coming down since time immemorial, living the teachings in amazingly wonderful ways, that the founder Acharya principle emerges in our Gaudiya Vaishnava line, which is relatively recent, just since Lord Chaitanya. Let's explore the origin and evolution of, well, even the phrase. It's a Sanskrit-English compound. Founder, English, it's kind of an organizational word. Acharya, Sanskrit, it's a spiritual word. Okay, so I'm gonna... It's too heavy, I'm a lightweight. These garlands are too heavy. I'm going to garland the lamp here. Okay. Who dat? Who's that? Six Goswamis. The six Goswamis of Vrindavan sharing Krishna consciousness. Within a dozen years after the disappearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what are Mahaprabhu's dates? By the common, what do they say? The appearance was 1486. And the disappearance?
1534.
Right. Only 48 years. Not how long you live, it's how well you live, right? Jesus, 32 years. Well, Shankaracharya, 32 years. So within a dozen years after the disappearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in 1534, his chief disciples, the six Goswamis, founded and organized Sangha. This was the first Hare Krishna movement after Mahaprabhu. An association in his name. So, let's see. Astika Prabhu, can you read that?
In the 16th century, after the disappearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his chief disciples, the six Goswamis of Vrindavan, founded the Vishwa Vaishnava Rajya Sabha.
Okay. Vishwa Vaishnava, and here Srila Bhaktisiddhanta translated that like this.
The Vishwa Vaishnava Rajya Sabha is the gathering of devotees who worship the king of all Vaishnavas in the world, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Right.
Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in
Yeah,
Sajjana
don't read the
Toshini.
references, just read the quotes. You can just read the references silently. So the Sabha, it's actually Sabha. Is it long way here? Okay, good. Yeah. The Sabha thus planted the organizational seed for, quote, the founder Acharya. Next we'll examine a philosophical seed. So what we're going to do over the course of 4 or 5 centuries, we're going to see the different ways that concept of founder Acharya evolved in our Gaudiya line. This is the first seed. It's a kind of organizational seed, because again, we have an organizational component and a spiritual component of that compound. So within a dozen years of in the 1540s, say, this sabha emerged. And the chief mover and shaker was, let's see, yeah, Srila, I'm not sure who Jiva, it was Srila Jiva Goswami. I mean, along with writing 400,000 verses, 4 Mahabharats, which itself is like so many times longer than the Iliad and the Odyssey combined. Sri Jiva, he found the time to organize this sabha and organize the Radha Damodar temple and make sure that as the Goswami's works were being written, that they were put in a library in the Radha Damodar. Organized the first book distribution party, the story of Shamananda, and Srinivas, and who else? Narottam, right. So amazing, just an amazing personality. So now we're going to see a philosophical seed. So say this is the 1540s. The first 3 seeds of Founder Acharya emerged within 20 years, just real fast. And the next seed is a philosophical seed, and that is a depiction of Srila Rupa Goswami. In 1552, so that's pretty soon, right after the 1540s, Srila Rupa Goswami finished writing his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, wherein he distinguished gurus from great acharyas, a distinction made clearer by Srila Prabhupada in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu summary study, The Nectar of Devotion. So let's read what Sri Rupa said in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Can you see? Want to read?
I don't have my glasses on.
Okay.
Somebody else will.
In his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami identified the 4th principle of devotional service as sadhu Vartanam, which Srila Prabhupada later translated in the Nectar of Devotion as following in the footsteps of great acharyas, teachers, under the direction of the spiritual master.
Okay, so there's regular gurus, and then there's these super gurus that emerge once in a while. And then in his introduction, Prabhupada also underlined this point by saying, quote, "In our mental activities, we should always try to think of Krishna and try to plan how to please him, following in the footsteps of the great acharyas and one's personal spiritual master." So this guru/great acharya distinction sowed a philosophical seed for, quote, the founder acharya. So that's another seed that was planted. And I make a little observation here now. Observation: as a child may see his parents as everything at first, then matures to see them in perspective. So a disciple may see his spiritual parents and relatives, that is, his diksha and shiksha gurus, as everything at first, then matures with their guidance to appreciate them in relation to, quote, the great acharyas. Now let's look at how one famous disciple saw his great initiating guru in relation to an even greater acharya. So far we have the organizational seed of the Sri Vishwa Vaishnava Raj Sabha, 1540s, and then in 1552, it's pretty amazing. Srila Rupa Goswami, he wasn't famous as being the most renounced, like Raghunath Das, or being the most prolific, like Sri Jiva, or being the senior, like Sanatana Goswami. But as soon as he wrote that Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and the Vaishnavas read it, everybody just, okay, he's the chief. Because he's the most expert at relishing the mellows, the moods, the taste, the relationship, the flavors of serving Krishna. So that sort of blends into the next seed, which, 1552, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. 1560, that's supposed to be Narottam, Gurus and Great Acharyas, okay. So in the 17th song of his Prarthana collection, whose songs we sing, like when you sing Guru Puja, we just sang it. That's from Prarthana. When someone disappears, the Lilo Premadana, that's from Prarthana. In Mayapur every morning, and some temples too, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya, that's from Prarthana. So in the 17th song of Prarthana collection, a song to Srila Rupa Goswami, Narottam feelingly expressed the Guru/Great Acharya distinction. Despite being the only Diksha disciple of, who was his Diksha Guru?
Lokanath.
Lokanath, right, quite a pastime. Lokanath Goswami. Narottam prayed to his master, Lokanath, in the 4th verse of this song, to bring him, Narottam, to the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami, the Rasacharya of their Sangha. That's it, Rupa Goswami was the British were not in India yet, so there was no English there to speak of. But they called Sri Rupa the Rasacharya of their Sangha, the Sri Vishwavaishnava Raj Sabha. Let's look at this song. In his Prarthana collection, Srila Narottam Das Thakur wrote in the 4th verse of Song 17, a song to Srila Rupa Goswami. You're native Bengali, Prabhu, yeah? Okay, so you sing that.
প্রভু লোকনাথ কবে সঙ্গে লইয়া যাবে শ্রীরূপের পদপদ্মে মোরে সমর্পিবে
When will my Lord and Master, this is Narottam singing, Lokanath Goswami, Prabhu Lokanath, take me with him and place me at the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami. Now how do you think Lokanath felt about that? What do you think he thought of that? Did he feel jumped over, circumvented, slighted? No. So who was Srila Rupa Goswami in terms of the Sri Vishwavaishnava Raj Sabha?
The Acharya.
Yes, he was the Rasacharya. Again, they didn't say founder Acharya, then there was no need for English Sanskrit compound. And here is a corroborative reference from CC Adi 5.203. Quote, Srila Rupa Goswami is described as the Bhakti Rasacharya, or one who knows the essence of devotional service. His famous book, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, is the science of devotional service, and by reading this book, one can understand the meaning of devotional service. Srila Prabhupada had a personal instruction from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. It may have been at his initiation even, or at least after that, before Siddhanta Saraswati passed away, that the person who became our Prabhupada should study this book scrutinizingly, minutely, analytically, and present it. And that's what Prabhupada did. Prabhupada stopped translating the Bhagavatam in 1969-70 in LA, sat down, and just gave us Nectar Devotion and Krishna book too. Because he was always saying, I'm an old man, I could die at any time. So he wanted to make sure we had all the essential texts before he died. Okay, so that was, I call it a cultural seed. Let's see here, a little more. Oh, okay, observation. As Srila Narottam Das Thakur's Diksha Guru, Lokanath Goswami had the honor of bringing his great and only disciple closer to their Rasacharya, Srila Rupa Goswami. This song by Srila Narottam Das Thakur thus planted a cultural seed of, quote, founder Acharya. That's kind of one litmus test of how authentic or bona fide or whatever you might want to say today in ISKCON. How are my Diksha and Shiksha Gurus, how are they enriching, enhancing, and deepening my relationship with Srila Prabhupada? That's the job. I hinted at it in the Ramanuja line yesterday. We're going to get to that, so I'll save that. Okay, 3 seeds again. The first seed, Sri Vishwavaishnava Raj Sabha, 1540s. Philosophical seed, 15 52 with Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the Guru Great Acharya distinction, and now we have this cultural seed. When will my Prabhu, when will my Lokanath take me with him and place me at the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami? So, and then by Mahaprabhu's inscrutable will, we have to wait about 300 years for the next seed. Those seeds lay dormant because Mahaprabhu, by his arrangement, the whole bhakti marg was driven underground. Within 100 years of Lord Chaitanya appearing, all these, what Bhaktivinoda Thakur later identified as upasampradayas, impostor sampradayas, counterfeit, came along and disgraced the whole bhakti marg. I remember going to college in the 1960s and taking a course on the philosophy of Eastern religion and spending a week on bhakti. And it was presented as this, degraded cult. Emotional, it was a kind of sahaja thing, where there was no real principles and there was a lot of singing and dancing and, illicit activity going on in the name of spirituality. Because the textbook was Radhakrishnan, Dr. Radhakrishnan, and Moore, this other guy, this Western scholar, somebody Moore. It was a Mayavadi book. And that's how they depicted bhakti as a sentimental, debauched cult. Oh, and by the way, if you're here for the first time, like we said last night, I'm doing all the talking right now, but at the end there's going to be a Q&A. And I'll ask you questions now, and then you ask me questions later. Okay, so literary seeds of the founder. There's our hero, our original bridge preacher, right? He sent the first books to the West, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It looks like a Chaturmasya time. Literary seeds of founder Acharya. So more than 300 years after the planting of the organizational, philosophical, and cultural seeds of founder Acharya, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur planted the phrases literary seeds in his Harinama Chintamani. Believe it or not, the touchstone of the holy name. So you think, well, what's the seed of founder Acharya doing in the book glorifying the holy name? Well, there's a section on the 10 offenses, and the Thakur really gets into it. We have translations now. Back in the day when that book was written, circa 1900 it was written. It's one of his later books. It was only written in Bengali. So only the Bengali Vaishnavas were privy to the teachings of Harinama Chintamani until I think it was the 1980s or 90s. We had Banu Maharaj's translation and we have Sarvabhavana Prabhu's translation. Okay, so while planting these seeds, these literary seeds, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur made an implicit connection between the prehistorical originators of the four Vaishnava Sampradayas. That's a mouthful, huh? Prehistorical originators. We're talking about Brahma, Shiva, Lakshmi, and the Kumaras. Those are the Adi Gurus of the four Vaishnava Sampradayas. So in his Harinama Chintamani, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he made an implicit connection, not explicit, but implicit connection, between the originators of those sampradayas and the historical acharyas, the more recent acharyas, uniquely empowered to represent them in our Kali age. So now we'll see when and how all those seeds, organizational, philosophical, cultural, and literary, fructified as the English-Sanskrit compound founder Acharya. But I got ahead of myself because I didn't even show you the literary seeds yet. So I'm just going to show you the seeds, and then a few slides later we're going to show you how those seeds blossom, finally, into these essential verses in Harinama Chintamani. I think it's chapter 6, text 22, 23. Here are the seeds. Okay.
In his Bengali work, Harinam Chintamani, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur sowed the literary seeds of the future English Sanskrit phrase founder Acharya in his chapter 6, disregarding the Guru.
Right, we say, when we do the 10 offenses, we say, Guru Rabhagyaha, to disobey the orders of the spiritual master, considering to be the ordinary man. Okay, so let's have Jesse read. No, we're going to have Prabhu. You read the Bengali, and then you read the English translation for each synonym.
Okay.
Sampradayar Adi Gurur.
The original guru of the Sampradaya.
Right, like those 4 personalities I mentioned.
Shiksha Guru Pratishtita.
Sampradayas, instructing gurus.
Right, like when Prabhupada preaches, he's always talking about the previous acharyas.
Adyacharya Jini.
One who is the original Acharya of the Sampradaya branch.
That is actually the Bengali for founder Acharya, Adya Acharya. Okay?
Guru Shiromani.
The crest jewel of all the gurus.
So those are the key phrases and those key words in those 2 verses, which we'll later see how they translate in concert. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, the harmonist. This was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's free translation of his father, Bhaktivinoda's Sajjanatoshini. Oh yeah, it's right there. Okay, so... So now we're getting up to the first appearance of the English Sanskrit phrase Founder Acharya. You might have seen Ravindra's Prabhu's seminar on this. This was a key, this reference in the Harmonist is a key reference in his book, Srila Prabhupada, the Founder Acharya, that was the GBC published in 2014, identifying Prabhupada's position. So I leaned on his research for this slide. There we go. So, alright. So it wasn't in this premiere issue. This is the launch issue. You see volume 1, June 27 to May 28, of the Harmonists. So let me, alright. Prabhu, you want to read that?
The English Sanskrit phrase Founder Acharya first appeared in the Harmonist, the English journal of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's Gaudiya Math.
Right. As you know, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was really big on English preaching because English was the rising star of languages. So he really encouraged his educated disciples like Prabhupada and Professor Sanyal and Bhan Maharaj to really develop their English writing and speaking, because Siddhanta Saraswati wanted to take the movement outside India, go all over the world. So it wasn't in that issue, but it was actually in the October 1930 issue of the Harmonists. Here's the scene. One patron of the Gaudiya mission, one Jagabandhu, he took his wealth and he built the Gaudiya Math a big headquarters in Calcutta, in Bagh Bazaar. When they started, they were in Altadunka Junction. And then they moved in 1930 to Bagh Bazaar, a big marble palace. And so the Gaudiya mission took the opportunity, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta did, to identify the Gaudiya mission's place in Vaishnava history and Vaishnava theology, and how his mission was representing the true teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So in the October 30 issue, I think it was October, November, December, it was like 3 issues where they were sort of coming out as the manifestation of Mahaprabhu's mercy in the present day. So here's a slide of a photocopy of the exact page. Now you know Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's English, right? He was so learned, he would make up words. In the Sri Brahma Samhita, how was Srimati Radharani referred to at one point? The supreme regulatrix. It was from a Latin root, and then what's the other, anyway. His idea, because he wanted to go to England, at that time the capital of the intellectuals in the West, and Germany, and out-intellectualize them. He wanted to impress them. So look at this. I want somebody to read from here all the way down to here and try to follow the syntax. It's not easy. But he's identifying, and there it is. You see founder Acharya with 2 Y's, no less. There's where the phrase first appears. And this is Sanyal, his scholar, one of his scholarly disciples, the editor, one of the editors of the Harmonist, and he's identifying ultimately Srila Bhaktisiddhanta as the founder Acharya of the Gaudiya branch of the Brahmavandva Sampradaya. So, all right, Jesse, we're going to test your expertise in reading.
The Gaudiya Math is also identical with its founder Acharya. The associates, followers, and abode of his divine grace are limbs of himself. None of them claim to be anything but a fully subordinate limb of this single individual. This unconditional, causeless, spontaneous submission to the head is found to be not only compatible with, but absolutely necessary for, the fullest freedom of initiative of the subordinate limbs.
Okay, good. And even our Prabhupada, he would say, ISKCON's my body, although that wasn't actually recorded, but there's so many ear witnesses to that that we accept it. Plus, there's another one that was recorded. You are all the limbs of my body. And there's more, but that's coming up later in another lesson. So, yeah, the idea is that the founder Acharya, he's like the soul of the body of devotees, and their full freedom, their full potential is realized when they cooperate with the will of the soul of the mission, who is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, who's the founder of Acharya. Okay, so in the early so that's 1930, October. In the early 1930s, before Srila Bhaktisiddhanta sent some of his learned sannyasis to preach abroad, he commissioned his scholarly disciple, Professor Nishikant Sanyal, otherwise known as Bhakti Sudhakar Narayan Das, to compile a book about the life and teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So the book was to be written with the gravity and sophistication required to impress the intelligentsia of the West. Let's take a look. Yeah, there's the cover. It was a projected trilogy. And in 2004, believe it or not, the second volume was published, posthumously. I don't know if he wrote 3 manuscripts, or 3 books worth of manuscripts, but at least number 1 was published, and that was enough to send them abroad. But there's the title, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, and you see volume 1. And what does it say? Yeah, Professor Nishikant Sanyal. They were very close. In 1933, after Sanyal finished drafting the book's manuscript, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta spent 2 months editing it. I think he hid out. Saraswati Thakur hid out in one of these British hill stations during the summer, and for 2 months just went over it with a fine-tooth comb. So the whole book is very bona fide. I remember when I joined in Boston in the summer of 1970, I was at ISKCON Press before the BDT was really up and running, and this book was there, and somehow it had come into the devotees' possession, and Brahmananda Swami at the time, he had just taken sannyas, he wrote Prabhupada about the book. Is it bona fide? Should we read it? And Prabhupada said, "Oh yes, it's very good book. So we can publish maybe something in our BTG, some excerpts." I don't know if that was ever done, but Prabhupada did say that. In Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Sanyal and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta made explicit what was only implicit in Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Harinama Chintamani. So what was that? The strong connection between the prehistorical originators of the 4 Vaishnava Sampradayas, Brahma, Vishnu, Kumaras, Shiva, or Brahma, was it Brahma? Lakshmi, Kumaras, Shiva. Right. So there's a strong connection. They drew a straight line between those Adi Gurus of those Sampradayas and the historical reinvigorators of those spiritual lineages for our Kali age. In other words, they became the founder acharyas, Ramanuja, Madhva, Nimbarka, Vishnu Swami. Okay, so let's take, because some of this, well, let's also, this is the next identifying reference of founder acharya. Is in this elaborate table of contents. It's more like an introduction. In this book, we're going to see that explicit connection. So, how about any ladies in the back? Kaival, you want to read?
The systems of Sri Vishnu Swami, Sri Nimbarka, Sri Ramanuja, and Sri Madhava are connected with the ancient times by the recognition of the remote authority of the eternal ancient teachers, namely Lakshmi, Brahma, Rudra, and the four Kumaras, respectively.
And
The four founder acharyas of the Iron Age profess to preach the views of those original teachers of the religion. Sri Krishna Chaitanya by Professor
Nishikant Sanyal. Yeah, so Sanyal and Siddhanta Saraswati drew this direct line between those Adi Gurus and those great acharyas, founder acharyas. The revivers, the reinvigorators of those lines in Kali Yuga. So, let's see, here we go. So then we go, okay, so a lot of us learn better by seeing it, right? We're not all auditory learners, sometimes we're visual learners. Draw me a picture. So here we go. There's Lord Shiva, right, Rudra, and then Vishnu Swami. The Kumaras, Chatusana, Sri Nimbarka, Lakshmi, Ramanuja, Lord Brahma, and Madhva. And you see in parentheses, you see their philosophies. So now we're going to address that. What are these Sanskrit phrases connected with each founder acharya? Note that the philosophy connected with each founder acharya identifies a particular aspect of the relationship between the Lord and his energies. In his visionary work, Sri Navadvip Dham Mahatmya, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared to each of the four Vaishnava founder acharyas, foretelling his own advent and mission. I mean, can you imagine this, what a work this is? Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was so empowered and such a visionary that the whole Navadvip Dham Mahatmya is Lord Nityananda giving Srila Jiva Goswami a guided tour of Navadvip. And both those personalities had lived hundreds of years earlier. And then in the course of that, Bhaktivinoda Thakur reveals that Lord Chaitanya appeared to these personalities, these founder acharyas. They lived before Mahaprabhu. But Mahaprabhu, he came to each one of them. Because, well, I won't give it away, I'll just read here. This is part of the Sri Krishna Chaitanya book. Or is it? Maybe it's Navadvip Dham Mahatmya. It is, yeah, it's Navadvip Dham Mahatmya. Okay, which Sanyal had read. So Sanyal is going to comment on this. This is Mahaprabhu, quote, "From Madhva, the Lord said, he would accept Madhva's complete defeat of the Mayavad philosophy and Madhva's service to the deity of Krishna." Has anybody been to Udupi? Right. It's like the Vrindavan of South India, huh? Yeah, all these Vishnu temples, but then you go to Udupi and it's all about Udupi Krishna. And I lived in and around Udupi for a couple of years. And for inspiration, we go to Udupi and we go to the temple. And chant japa. And it's not like here, with the darshan, it's so open and easy. You have to go, if you remember, if you went to Udupi, you have to get close. You have to peer inside the bars to see Udupi Krishna. So one morning I was chanting japa, and then I noticed that on the altar, behind the bars, There was a cat. And he was standing. I mean, we have this phrase in English, like herding cats, right? Because they're so independent, cats usually. Although I understood from one lady who was a cat trainer that actually cats can be trained. But you can't train them like dogs. They have a different psychology. Right? So anyway, so this cat was standing on his haunches like a sentry, just guarding Udupi, Krishna. So I found a pujari, or a brahmachari in the temple who spoke English. They speak Kannada. They speak in Karnataka, or Tulu, is another dialect. So I said, Prabhuji, there's a cat on the altar. Yes, Prabhuji. Oh, is that all right? Well, why is the cat there? Cat is for rat. That was their solution. I guess they had a rat problem. So they had a well-trained cat sitting there. And then in another room of the temple, they have Madhva's seat. We have a seat here for Madhva, where he used to give Bhagavatam. So they're really founder Acharya focused. And that's who they are. They're Madhvites. And then if you get to know one who speaks English, yes, Prabhu, and my beloved Diksha Guru is so-and-so, and my beloved Shiksha Gurus are. But Madhva is the main person. That's the person from whom they're deriving their identity. It's his books they're reading. It's, again, his Murti they're worshipping. His mission is, what is it called here? Dvaita. Because you see Madhva in relief outside the temple, and he's like this, right? Mm-hmm. Is this the peace sign, or what's he doing here?
It's the sign of the soul and the super soul.
That's right. Well, yes, there's two. It's not all one. He's on a real crusade against Mayavad. And the Madhvites know that also in our Prabhupada's Pranam mantra, it's all about Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshacharya. We're also on a crusade to root out impersonalism and voidism. So they really like ISKCON. And they invite us to their most sacred events. Every 2 years they have this paryaya, which means kind of the changing of the guard. Because on Kar Street, the circular street in front of the temple, there's so many different mutts. I think there's 8 mutts. And every 2 years, another temple takes their turn at the puja. They all take turns. So when they have this paryaya, this changing of the puja, they invite us, like part of the delegation, or the invitees. So it's really neat. But that was the seed, for me, of the Founder Acharya seminar. I lived there between 93 and 95, off and on, for a couple of years. And when I saw how the relationship between their Diksha and Shiksha Gurus and their Founder Acharya, I said, wow, that's it. That's the whole thing. Nobody's minimized, nobody's disrespected, and nobody's imitating Madhva. So, yeah, and then it just sort of grew in me until the time is right, to do this. So, let's see here. So Lord Chaitanya, he appeared to Madhva and he said, I'm going to take from you your defeat of the Mayavad and your service to the deity. That's another pastime, how Udupi Krishna appeared, coming by boat by Dwarka. It's a whole thing. From Ramanuja, the Lord Chaitanya said he would accept the concept of bhakti, unpolluted by karma and dhyan, as well as service to the devotees. So Shuddha Bhakti and Vaishnava Seva. Ramanuja was really strong on that. From Vishnu Swami's teachings, the Lord said he would accept the sentiment of exclusive dependence on Krishna, plus the path of Raga Bhakti, spontaneous devotion. And from Nimbarka, the Lord would embrace the necessity of taking shelter of Radha. Right? That's the internal potency. And the high esteem they held for the gopis' love of Krishna. So that's where the Madhurya is coming in. Now, this is in the Navadvip Mahatmya, and now Sanyal, who also had access to that literature, because he was Bengali Vaishnava. When he wrote, later on, he wrote Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Inspired by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Navadvipdal Mahatmya, Professor Sanyal noted in Sri Krishna Chaitanya, on page 164, that each philosophy of the four Vaishnava founder acharyas, while sound, there are all these technical terms you see, those are correct. They're sound, but they're incomplete. The philosophy of Sri Krishna Chaitanya, however, quote, this is Sanyal, reconciles, harmonizes, and perfects the four founder acharya philosophies by presenting, what's our technical phrase for Mahaprabhu's philosophy? Achintya-bheda Veda-tattva, the inconceivable simultaneous oneness and difference of the Lord and His energies. Yes, so now the next slide identifies the foundational role founder acharyas play in their disciplic successions, which I've already mentioned, but it's worth highlighting. Okay, there they are. Sripad Ramanuja, I mentioned last night, he appeared in 1017, so this last year they had their millennial. We made a big deal, and rightly so, of Prabhupada's centennial in 1996. Right, and then we celebrated ISKCON's 50th and Prabhupada's 50th coming to America a year, 2, 3 ago. So, so there's Ramanuja. He appeared first. For example, I'll just read this. Providing a core identity and foundational relationship for all generations of their followers, Srila Ramanuja Acharya and Srila Madhvacharya are outstanding examples of the preeminent position of the founder Acharya in the Guru Parampara. For example, and I did mention this a little bit last night, in the Ramanuja branch of the Sri, or Lakshmi Sampradaya, serious followers still introduce themselves thus. I got this from our South Indian devotee, great sannyasi, unique South Indian sannyasi. This is our Bhaktivinoda Maharaj. Do you know him? Had he ever been here? No? Okay. He's amazing because he grew up steeped in South Indian culture and then he joined ISKCON. But he's also equally able to relate to Westerners. It's not common that that's there. So he was the one that told me, yes, Suresvara, you know, if you meet a Ramanuji, you just ask him who he is and he'll tell you, Adiyan, Ramanuja, Dasan. That's Tamil. I am your servant, the servant of Ramanuja. But in the Ramanuja Sampradaya, they even have a Shastra describing the relationship. I guess it's their Smriti. It's the Ramanuja Smriti. Describing the relationship of Ramanuja to the gurus who succeed him. So Ramanuja is called their Udharak. He's their Jagat Guru. He's their founder. And it's his books they study. And it's his Murti they worship. And it's his mission they execute. And then all the gurus since then, for 1,000 years, they're called Upakarak. Upakarak means, what's the literal? I forget the literal, but it's like, it's benefactor gurus. Benefactor gurus, the people they take initiation from. How do they benefit their disciples? They enrich, enhance, and deepen their foundational relationship with their founder by teaching him Ramanuja's books, teaching him how to worship him, the Murti, and teaching him how to execute. It's the last slide back. It's called the Vishishta Dvaita mission, the qualified oneness. There is a oneness, as Prabhupada always taught us. The Lord and the living entity, or spiritual, or Satchitananda. But the Lord has infinite potency, and we have infinitesimal potency. A big, big difference. So that's how the Ramanujis do that. What's it called? Prapanna Tapana. Sri Prapanna Tapana. That's their Shastra in which the relationship between Ramanuja and their gurus since then is identified. And similarly with the Madhvas. Now, they're just regional. It's mainly Udupi and Sri Rangam. And since Prabhupada blazed the trail, sometimes some of them dare to cross the ocean and, preach a little. but mainly they're regional, their influence, those sampradayas. ISKCON is international. It's all over the world. And there's so many forces always threatening to divide us, because we're coming from with so many differences. Like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he saw it, he predicted, or he longed for it and predicted that, oh, when will the day come when French and the German and the Chinese, all the people from all over the world will come to Sri Mayapur Dham. And we see it now, right, in Mayapur. During Guru Puja, you see people from China and Brazil and Iceland and you name it, coming to offer flowers to our founder Acharya's lotus feet. So because materially we're so different, and because we are conditioned materially, there are so many, we're coming from so many different cultures and religious backgrounds and ethnic backgrounds and political backgrounds. Prabhupada, he provides the unity amidst the diversity. And we're going to take a look at that very intensely in Lesson 8. I call it, to love is to cooperate. So how to find the unity and how to apply that unity diversely on so many issues we have. That was Prabhupada. He called it a special technique, right in one purport. Okay, we're coming to the end of the lesson here. Alright, I'll just end that point by saying, for ISKCON we may note with profit how the Ramanujis and Madhvas have survived and thrived over the centuries by honoring their founder Acharya as their foundational relationship and core identity. And then I end with a few, we're going to see, as promised, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's verses in full bloom translation. What I did was I took Bhanu Swami's translation of these verses and Sarvabhavana's, and interestingly enough, Jayapataka Maharaj's translation. Because if you ever get a hold of the 1989 Vyasa Puja book to Prabhupada, Jayapataka Maharaj, he wrote this brilliant identification of Prabhupada as founder Acharya based on these verses. And then so I took those three translations and then I blended them. I just took the essence of them and I made it a little more readable. And then I showed it to Bhanu. I didn't want to just speculate, so I showed it to Bhanu Maharaj in Chennai. I said, and I was holding my breath, because this is a big part of the philosophy of what I was presenting. I said, Maharaj, you've translated Harinama Chintamani. Can you take a look at my kind of fusion of three translations and see if it's authentic? And he looked at it, and I was like, I was holding my breath. And then in his way, he just looked at it, he said, yeah, it's okay. You know how he talks? He's really fast. You know? Anyway. So here is so Srila Bhaktivinoda Swami Acharya's seeds in full bloom. Or who wants to read this? How about Yogendra Prabhu? Read that.
One should first of all accept the instructions of the Sampradaya, Adi Guru, the original Guru of a Sampradaya, and behave accordingly. In a disciplined succession of Vaishnavas, the previous Acharyas are established respectfully as Shiksha Guru, Pratishtita, instructing Gurus for the Sampradaya.
Okay, that's them. This is the beginning. Sampradaya Adi Guru, Shiksha Guru, and then here it comes.
However, the Acharya, the founder Acharya, or original Guru of the disciple succession, is appropriately worshipped and respected as the Guru Shiromani, the topmost crown jewel of the spiritual masters. His perfect philosophical conclusions are to be followed by all in his succession. Any contrary instructions will not be accepted.
Alright, so the Bengali is Adyacharya, not the Adi Guru of the whole thing, going back to the antiquity, but someone who revives the teachings in a way that's so powerful. that he changes the course of history. Among a Sampradaya's gurus, note the pivotal position of the founder Acharya. For his followers, the founder Acharya, quote, the topmost crown jewel of the spiritual masters, is the touchstone upon which his followers test all teachers and teachings. That's the original meaning of the English word touchstone. It's a stone for testing the carat of gold. So for us, when we don't live in a vacuum, we're going to hear so many things. So many people will come along with their, other sanghas will come along with a different siddhanta or whatever. So there's books out there, there's the internet now, everything's all over the world. So we test them by how consistent those teachings are, and the mood of them too, with our Srila Prabhupada's life, teachings, mood, and mission. That's the litmus test for us. We don't mind hearing from other people, but we always test them against Prabhupada's teachings. So, now what I do, again, there's one more? No. Yes, this is the last slide of the lesson. Now, on this slide, just like I drew from Ravindra Swarup for that Prabhu, for that excerpt from the Harmonist, the actual initial appearance of the phrase, Founder Acharya. So, for this last slide, I drew on Shiva Ramaswamy's research. Shiva Ramaswamy wrote a book in 1999. It's almost 20 years old. Well, it is 20 years old this year. It's called The Shiksha Guru. Because in the 90s, ISKCON was still coming off, still recovering from the founder of the Zonal Acharya era, where there was a lopsided highlighting of the Diksha Guru. And back in 94, the GBC passed their first founder Acharya resolution, identifying Prabhupada's unique position. But still, Shiva Ramaswamy could see that we badly need to develop our Shiksha culture. Like I told you last night, that when Krishna Kshetra Swami initiates, he heartily encourages his Diksha disciples to get good Shiksha gurus wherever they are, so they can be locally nourished on a daily basis. So Maharaj wrote this great book called The Shiksha Guru. I don't even know if it's in print, I happen to still have a copy. And he really took a lot of it from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And there's one section of the book called The Founder Acharya. So what you're going to see are bullet points on this last slide of identifying the unique position of a founder Acharya as distinguished from regular gurus. So let's go to that. And because we're getting finally close to looking at Prabhupada's life and teachings, I might, if there's time, give examples of each point from Prabhupada's life. So let's do Gokula Ranjana Prabhu. How about the first one?
Sorry. Possesses great spiritual strength.
Yeah, great spiritual strength. And where does he get this strength? Krishna, that's always a safe answer, right?
From his Guru Maharaj.
Yeah, his Guru Maharaj, the whole parampara. So, so with Prabhupada, so strong, I mean, we could have been his grandchildren, depending on our age. We couldn't keep up with it, right? Prabhupada, if he felt jet lag, for example, he didn't let on. Only when it got real bad did the people even know that there was something wrong with his health. He was always suffering from something, but he just was very tolerant. So, he would land in a place, maybe he'd been on a plane for hours or whatever, and whatever the time was, he just adapt instantly. It's midnight, it's time to get up and translate. Time to stay up and translate. At 6 a.m. it's time for a morning walk. It's noon, it's time for midday massage, prasad, whatever the time, Prabhupada is very regulated, despite the constant travel, which is practically superhuman. I mean, I'm still feeling a little effect just from flying from Tucson to here. That's only 1,000 miles or something, or whatever it is. So great spiritual strength, because the pure devotee on that level, someone who has that level of Krishna praying, is just, what do they say? Love can move mountains. What to speak of the highest levels of Krishna praying? So Prabhupada was just non-stop, as he told Acharya Prabhu once. My mission is, or my desire is, to spread Krishna consciousness everywhere at once. So he had found this energy, but he had an earthbound body. So we'll also look at what happened, when he had a heart attack in New York. Okay, possesses great spiritual strength. Want to keep going?
His teachings take precedence
Right.
over all others and are compulsory for his followers.
Yes. Now, precedence is a tricky word. It doesn't mean that the founder Acharya thinks that he somehow surpassed the previous Acharyas. That's not the mood. It's like Vallabhacharya, the famous pastime with Lord Chaitanya. Vallabhacharya, very scholarly devotee, brings his own tika, his own commentary on the Bhagavatam, and announces to Mahaprabhu that by writing this commentary, I have surpassed Sridhar Swami. And Mahaprabhu said, "Oh, you have passed the Swami?" Because Swami can mean master, it can mean husband too. Oh, well, you've become like a prostitute if you think you're now independent of your Swami. So Vallabha was like, oh, he was taken aback, he took it to heart. So Prabhupada, when he stayed up, when he was translating in the middle of the night, there's even that film about it, Brilliant as the Sun. Have you seen that? Short, it's an old film. It was recorded in Prabhupada's time. Prabhupada very kindly allowed Yadavar Prabhu to come in his quarters at midnight one time, because Yadavar had explained to Prabhupada, we want to show the people how these books are produced. So it starts with Prabhupada translating. So you see Prabhupada in front of one of these books with a lot of commentaries from previous acharyas. He had a book in LA and a book in London, I think in India, in Vrindavan too. He had this book. And so he would go over the commentaries of the previous acharyas, and then he'd weave into his purports his unprecedented realizations from doing what no one had ever done, spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. So it was unique. It was unique commentaries. And then Yadavar said, and then after a while Prabhupada said, these lights are too disturbing, because Yadavar had to have bright lights. But he did let Yadavar do that. And then you see the BBT, the production, the technology in the 70s, how they were producing the books with computers and transcribers and proofreaders. I was the indexer, and then the books would get offered on the altar to Sri Rukmini Dwarkadish, and then they'd go out on the street, or they'd be shipped in the BBT truck. They use C-band, what is it called? The Citizens Band?
CB radio.
CB radio. And so our CB ID was Easy Journey. And then you see they staged a book being distributed. I think Gopa Vrindapal was the distributor, and then Kuvera in LA in the 70s. He was the guy that was well dressed, and he was stopped. And then they see him coming to the temple, and then someday he starts distributing. Anyway, so his teachings take precedence. So, of course, our Prabhupada was so transparent to the parampara that he would always give full credit to his Guru Maharaj and to the previous acharyas. He would call us his parents because we were taking such good care of him. So, but it is a fact. His teachings do take precedence, and he is the Guru Shiromani, the topmost crown jewel of the spiritual masters in our ISKCON line. So we measure everything against Prabhupada's life, his teachings, his mood, his mission. Okay, and then Shivaran Swami identified another symptom of the founder Acharya.
Holds a unique post.
What does unique mean in English?
Without an equal.
Special.
Except
One of a kind. One of a kind.
One of a kind.
Ah, there's an English teacher. Madam Das Prabhu. Hare Krishna, thanks for coming. You can't even see.
I'm here.
All right. He knows, that's good. A unique post, one of a kind. Although if you look in different style books or editing books, they'll say, it's okay to say very unique or whatever. Anyway, unique, one of a kind. So, for us, there's nobody like our founder Acharya, and enough said. We'll say a lot more in later lessons about them. Okay?
is the Acharya or leader of all Vaishnavas even when physically present.
That might sound counterintuitive, but a lot of Prabhupada's godbrothers didn't like the way Prabhupada was doing it. Although Prabhupada would confide to people like Acharya Prabhu, for all their grumblings, they haven't advanced the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu 1 inch. We're going to look at that in lesson 8. So, because to protect his budding ISKCON, his tree, his branch, as Prabhupada put it in one purport, Nadi Leela, ISKCON is a branch of the desire tree of love of Godhead of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So to protect that small tree, it's like when you plant trees, as you well know, you have to fence them in, you have to mulch them extra, you got to give them a lot of TLC, tender loving care. So Prabhupada had to say and write some heavy stuff about what went down in the 1930s in the Gaudiya Math, and some godbrothers didn't like it. But Prabhupada because Prabhupada was Uttam, but he was coming down in Madhyam, he was making distinctions to preach. He had to call a spade a spade. But then in his last year, if you hear the recording, you see here Prabhupada's mood is more Uttam. He's just about gratitude and praising. And at one point, not long before he passed, within weeks, Prabhupada said to Bhakti True Maharaj, "Call my godbrothers. I have to apologize to them for what I've said and written." So a lot of them came. And there was one Ashram Maharaj who sort of became the focus, or the spokesman. And Prabhupada said, "Please forgive me. I am Mahapatita. I have greatly fallen for what I have said to you and about you." And so, by that time, the godbrothers who came, they were there to appreciate Prabhupada. If they weren't, they didn't come. But a lot of them came. And so, Ashram Maharaj said, "No, Mahapatita, you're Mahapatita Pavana. You're the savior of the greatly fallen. What you done? You're not Mahapatita, Swami Maharaj." No, Prabhupada said, No, I became puffed up. So many disciples, so much Lakshmi, so many temples, so many assets, so many books. And then Ashram Maharaj said, No, you can chastise us. You're the leader. You can scold us. You can correct us. So at least at the very end, there was a kind of reconciliation. So that was nice, because of course we didn't know anything. And Prabhupada was everything for us. He was Shiksha Diksha, Dharma Pradarshika, Fountain. He was everything rolled into one. But, the Gaudiya Math people, they had more knowledge and experience and culture. So, because Prabhupada was such a revolutionary person, like his Guru Maharaj, they didn't always appreciate Prabhupada's innovations, strictly according to Siddhanta, but his applications, you'll see in lesson 8, they just couldn't countenance letting, for example, I'll give you a preview, of men and women serving in the same centers. That was a total no-no, as far as they were concerned. But that's lesson 8. Okay, one more, I think? Yeah.
Awards power of attorney to his followers who strictly adhere to his teachings.
Yeah, power of representation. So Prabhupada is such a touchstone, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, you can know how great a Vaishnava is by how many others he inspires to become Vaishnavas. So Prabhupada did that. He inspired thousands of people. Only, actually, 4,800 and something took Diksha. There was this book. Prabhupada kept a book. But he inspired so many more, and also he continues to. By his life, his recording, the record of his life and his teachings, and his move and his mission. So, he inspired so many people, and his teachings and his example went so deeply into so many hearts that now so many people can represent him. And we need to release that flow of mercy even more. As we'll see in succeeding lessons. So let's see if that's all. Yeah. Yes, and my thanks to Srila Swami for identifying those points. And now I'm going to read the lesson outcomes, which you can kindly base your questions on, so we don't get too sidetracked about talking about anything and everything, and you can't do that in 20 minutes anyway. So, lesson outcomes. By the end of the lesson, the students will be able to identify organizational, philosophical, cultural, and literary seeds of the founder Acharya principle as they appeared over time in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. We should be able to recount how the founder Acharya phrase advented in the 1930s. Identify the foundational role of the founder Acharya in the Vaishnava Sampradayas. And finally, we should be able to identify symptoms of the founder Acharya noted in the Harinama Chintamani. By the grace of Srila Swami, who dug them out, who mined them. Okay, yeah. And then I'll give you a preview of tomorrow morning before the question. Okay, that's sweet, huh? Bhaktivinoda Manor, 1973 summer, so many pastimes came out of that time because Prabhupada, by Krishna's arrangement, had to stay there for many weeks. And to this day, if you look at Prabhupada's rooms on the back lawn, the south lawn, you can see what Prabhupada said. Okay, we'll start with that. Transition. Having looked at the origin, characteristics, and historical development of the founder Acharya principle, we are now ready to examine how our Srila Prabhupada emerged as the founder Acharya of a fresh branch of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, ISKCON. Okay. So I'm going to sit down, be quiet, and face the firing squad. Let me just get my tea and throat drops. Thanks for coming, Prabhu. We're going to do 8 more. Okay. Right. Safe travels. Oh, you're moving closer?
I'm just going to sit down.
Okay. And let me just take a swig. This is ginger, lemon, and stevia. It's really good. Hot. Good for the throat. All right. Roland, we'll use Vaisheshik Prabhu's word. Reflections? You see, Vaish, on the Gokula Ranjan book.
There's many either questions or comments, but the most recent thing that you just were referring to about Prabhupada's relationship with his god brothers, there's a pastime, and I've mentioned it here, so many of these boys know, but it's important to, in 1975, when we were preparing to go for the first real large Gaur-Purnima festival.
That was 74.
Well, that was when the presidents were going. 75 was open for everyone.
Okay.
So, okay. For you it was 74, for me it was 75. Okay. So, in Brooklyn, we were all gathering from South America, from the West Coast, everybody got together. And Harikesh was giving us, etiquette for being in the Holy Dhama. And he told about a pastime when he was Prabhupada's secretary in Vrindavan. And after breakfast, one morning, he went into the room and said, "Tell us once again, Srila Prabhupada, how you smashed your rascal godbrothers." Prabhupada sat up very straight and said, "I can criticize my godbrothers, but you cannot." Harike said, I was in the land of Krishna in the service of the pure devotee, and 24 hours later I was in, Maya's capital and Kali's kingdom, Kali's playground in New York City.
Yeah, that's good. We're gonna, in the next lesson, we're gonna see a similar of what Prabhupada can do, of what we can't imitate. Thank you.
The first 4 seeds, I got lost in the story of the individuals. I don't know, the first 3 or 4 seeds, I didn't quite catch the exact seed.
Okay, you want me to repeat the types of the seeds?
Yeah.
There was an organizational seed. Just within a dozen years after Mahaprabhu left, there was an organization started, the Sri Vishwa Vaishnava Raj Sabha. In fact, when Bhaktivinoda Thakur identified those upper sampradayas in the late 19th century and he started to revive. I mean, it was really, he knew he didn't have time because he was getting older, and he left it. He prayed for the ray of Vishnu's son, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta came and started the Gaudiya mission. So yeah, that was the first seed, organizational seed.
By Jiva? Jiva? Was that by Jiva Goswami?
Well, all of them. But Jiva was the leader of that.
Okay.
I don't know how he had the time to do that. 4 lakh verses, and because usually when you write, it's like writing can be a lonely occupation. You got to really shut yourself up and concentrate. But he's Nityasiddha, so he did all that. Okay, so that was the organizational seat. Then, just in 1552, Sri Rupa planted the philosophical seed in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by making a crucial distinction between regular gurus, one's personal spiritual master, and the great acharyas who come along once in a blue moon. So that was there, and then the next one was circa 1560. Most scholars agree that's when Prarthana was completed or published. And then in that song by Narottam, he's very dramatically, because you know the story about Narottam wanted to be the disciple of Lokanath, but Lokanath had made a vow, I won't take disciples, because he was so mortified when Mahaprabhu left, he just withdrew. But finally, Narottam won his heart. So is anybody a parent of an only child here? I am. Okay. You know how close that is, that bond. After 3 or 4, maybe it gets a little looser or something. But an only child is... So Narottam was the only spiritual child of Lokanath. But yet, at the same time, I should say, in that song, when will my Prabhu Lokanath, when will he take me to lotus and place me at the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami, who was their founder, their Rasacharya, the foundational guru of the Sri Vishwa Vaishnava Raj Sabha. And Lokanath's very happy. Yes, I know, that's my duty. That's what I'm trying to do. So it must have been a real impetus for him to do that even more. That's the business of Shiksha and Diksha gurus, post-founder Acharya, to enrich, enhance, and deepen their disciples' foundational relationship with the founder Acharya. Okay, so that was I call a cultural seed. And then finally, hundreds of years later, you get Bhaktivinoda Thakur single-handedly reviving the bhakti path in an authentic way. It was in the crucible of disgrace for hundreds of years. Can you imagine? I can't even imagine how people like Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Baladev Krishna, they must have been just heartbroken at what happened. And finally, Bhaktivinoda Thakur brings it back, and then in Harinama Chintamani he identifies in chapter 6 of the book, disregarding the Guru, because there's a whole section on the 10 offenses, the unique position of founder Acharya. And yeah, it's really good. And what's the Bengali name for founder Acharya? Adi Acharya with a samas. Adi Acharya. Yeah. And he's the Guru Shiromani. He's the topmost jewel of the spiritual masters in his line. And no conclusions should be screwed out that are contradictory to his mood, his teachings, like that. So, there may be other moods, there may be other even disagreements about Siddhanta amongst different, but that's another Sangha. That's why if we want to be in Prabhupada's ISKCON Sangha, we don't take intimate Sangha from others who have different opinions or, emphases. We're following Srila Prabhupada. Okay, and so that was it for, the 4 seats.
What is the title, or the heading that comes under? Organizational, bhakti, cultural, and what's the 4th one?
Literary. That's what I call it. Because it was a book.
Which book?
Harinama Chintamani. He wrote in 1900. Most of them were his last books, just in Bengali. And we didn't have a translation of that until the late 20th century. Bhanu Maharaj and who was it? Sarvabhauma. Yes.
The Acharya, the Acharya is the founder Acharya, the Shiromani you were saying. But he's representing the Adi Guru, but in our line, if the Adi Guru is Madhvacharya,
okay, this is good.
Prabhupada is the Acharya, is not reviving the teachings, or he's not expounding the teachings of Madhva, but he's expounding the teachings of Mahaprabhu. So Mahaprabhu is a unique Adi Guru.
Well, here's how the Gaudiya Math. This is excellent. I purposely leave out. I leave gaps so you can ask this about. If those are the 4 sampradayas, what about the Gaudiya sampradaya? How does that all fit in, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a lot to talk about. But in those harmonists, when those issue of the harmonists came out in 1930, when that Baghbazar marble temple came, then Professor Sanyal, with Bhaktisiddhanta's tutelage, of course, and other writers, they were presenting the theology behind the Gaudiya mission, what this Gaudiya mission represents. So here's what they say. That in the Gaudiya Sampradaya, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the role of a devotee. But he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We know him as the Avatari, the source of all avatars, right? He's Krishna, but he's in a special mood of Radha, which is like inconceivable. That's why you get, Swarup Damodar, Mahaprabhu's personal secretary, quoted by Kaviraj Goswami right in the 3rd verse of the CC. May that Lord, who is known as the son of Srimati Shachi Devi, be transcendently situated in the innermost chambers of your heart. Resplendent with the radiance of molten gold, he has appeared in the age of Kali by his causeless mercy to bestow no incarnation ever offered before, the most sublime and radiant and mellow of devotional service, the mellow of conjugal love. So, this is Lord Chaitanya is God playing the role of a devotee of God in the highest, Mahabhav. So, in the Gaudiya Vaishnava, or in the Gaudiya mission, Siddhanta Saraswati's organization, they're explaining that Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he only wrote down what? Shikshastra. 8 verses. So he left it to his chief disciples, the 6 Goswamis, to articulate the whole Gaudiya Vaishnava theology, which is, as Prabhupada says on the recording, you might remember, the most voluminous, exacting, and consistent of any spiritual culture in the world. I mean, nobody's even attempted to refute Jiva Goswami's Sandarbhas. Like, nobody can touch it. I mean, because they're Manjari Gopis. They're liberated souls. They've come with Mahaprabhu to teach and display the highest levels of Krishna consciousness. So, Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Adi Gurus of the line. It's like you had Brahma, Lakshmi, Shiva, the four Kumaras as the Adi Gurus of the four Sampradayas. The Adi Gurus of the Gaudiya line, the Gaudiya Sampradaya, are the 6 Goswamis. That's what they say. But then it went underground for hundreds of years. So who revived it? So they're identifying their spiritual master, who happens to be Siddhanta Saraswati, a liberated soul, a ray of Vishnu. He's now the founder Acharya of the Gaudiya mission, which is reviving Mahaprabhu's teachings. There's Kaviraj Goswami was very sensitive to the connection between the Brahma Sampradaya, what happened between Krishna and Brahma, Krishna enlightening Brahma, and the Brahma Samhita came out of Brahma's mouth, and what Mahaprabhu did with Sri Rupa Goswami. Does anybody have a device? Look up, it's Madhya Lila, chapter 19, first verse. Can you pull that up? And just read that. It's a very powerful connection between the Brahma Sampradaya and the Gaudiya Sampradaya, which is a special branch, you might say, of the Gaudiya.
Madhya Lila, which chapter?
19, text number 1. Just read the English, yeah. This is Kaviraj Goswami making this connection.
Before the creation of this cosmic manifestation, the Lord enlightened the heart of Lord Brahma with the details of the creation and manifested the Vedic knowledge. In exactly the same way, the Lord, being anxious to revive the Vrindavan pastimes of Lord Krishna, impregnated the heart of Rupa Goswami with spiritual potency. By this potency, Srila Rupa Goswami could revive the activities of Krishna in Vrindavan, activities almost lost to memory. In this way, he spread Krishna consciousness throughout the world. Wow.
Throughout the world, yeah. Now, it's only time is separating us, but it's still going on. That's why Prabhupada said we're Rupanugas. We're Prabhupada-nugas, especially in ISKCON, but we're also Rupanugas. 19.1, Madhya 19.1. This is Kaviraj Goswami making this connection between Brahma and Krishna and Mahaprabhu and Rupa Goswami. Very powerful. So, but interestingly enough, here's a little PS. Siddhanta Saraswati allowed himself to be called the founder Acharya of the Gaudiya mission in the Harmonist, but he never personally introduced himself that way. Because he was concerned that if he was called the founder Acharya, that people might conflate that with Sampradaya Acharya. They might think that he thinks he's starting a new Sampradaya or something, and that's not what he was doing. He was reviving the Gaudiya Sampradaya, the Gaudiya mission, and also he could foresee what was going to become of his own organization. We're going to see that in lesson 4, as well as who would be capable of reviving it in the person of our Prabhupada. So he never introduced himself like that, because he was concerned about perception, what they call optics these days. Perceptions of how the mission would be perceived publicly and by the harmonists. And he could see what was going to happen anyway. That it would quickly, unfortunately, dissolve. It was so. How are we doing? Yeah, it's just about 9. Okay, we'll take... Wait a minute, you're going to have to catch me when I'm Java walking around, because I don't want to, disturb breakfast. I know we can eat through the ears unlimitedly, but I want to keep schedules, because I promised I wouldn't go on and on. I used to do that. I used to go on, like in Moscow, they kept me for 3 hours for each lesson. It was too much. Okay, so to be continued. You know what you can do? If you're really ambitious, you can invite me for lunch. But just make it light, because I can't digest my food if I'm talking about high stuff. Anyway, tune in tomorrow. This is the culmination of the Sambandha section of the series, where all the points from the spiritual masters and the founder Acharya is nicely tied up in how Prabhupada manifested ISKCON and realized what Mahaprabhu was asking him to do. The last thing Prabhupada intended when he came over on the ship was to become the founder Acharya of anything. He just wanted to revive the Gaudiya mission. But Mahaprabhu had another plan. Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.